Welcome, everyone, to the Awful Takes podcast, the podcast where I share my awful views with the online populace. And I try to make myself synonymous with great reviewers, but it's probably never going to happen. But here we are. My name's Nabahi. I'm joined by my co-host.
Hello, I'm Wallied from Sergata Productions.
And we have a special guest here once again.
I'm back, baby. Y'all thought you could get rid of me.
Third time's a charm.
Yeah. So they thought that they wouldn't have me again, but funny enough, they're both strapped to chairs, and I'm forcing them to do this podcast with me. So.
Yep. He made us sign a contract, so it looks like we're locked in for the next 10 years.
You sold your life away.
We're corporate now.
We are here talking about an amazing film that we had mentioned on our Dan review that we were going to review. I do apologize that it's taken some time for us to get around to it. I know with me in particular, after watching it the first time, I just wanted to see it again, you know? And I'm really glad I did, because I feel like if I was just rating it on a first-time viewing experience, I would have probably changed my overall opinion. It may have come off as a little more kind of biased. So I'm kind of glad we took some time and I got to watch it again at least. Jonah, what are we going to be talking about today?
We're talking about a one-shot called Look Back. One-shot's basically just a one-book story. Usually mangakas do it. It's like their way of like showing their skills to try and get hired by big companies. Or that it's just like something quick that they just want to make a short story. It's by Tatsuki Fujimoto, the creator of Chainsaw Man. If I haven't talked about him enough, he's like my favorite writer right now. I think his works are just absolutely amazing. This story follows two elementary school students. There's Fujino and there's Kiyomoto. Fujino is, I believe she's in 5th grade, and she does weekly art for her school's comic book in the newspaper, and she takes a lot of pride in that. It opens up with a shot of her just late at night, kind of brainstorming and drawing, and it's like basically her biggest pride that she has right now. Like, you can see it, like they pass out the school newspaper and everyone's reacting to her drawings, and they find it funny, they find it great. And so she's a very people pleaser kind of person. She takes a lot of enjoyment out of seeing those reactions out of people, and then things kind of quickly turn when she finds out that a 4th grader, someone who's younger than her, wants to do one of the strips for the newspaper one day, and she sees her artwork, and it is like way better than hers, and her like whole world is flipped upside down. She's like, oh my goodness, like what am I doing? Like I kind of need to get on it. And it turns into this like whole toxic relationship with art and obsession, and it kind of flourishes from there. I don't know if one of you want to pick up on that a little bit.
Yeah, no, definitely with the intro. Okay, first of all, going into this, I had seen a trailer beforehand. I couldn't really determine from the trailer like what it was about. I guess what stood out to me the most was just the imagery that was being shown. And so obviously I was excited because obviously I know you were hyping it up. It looked like it was worth watching. And definitely with the start of it, I was not ready for the kind of story it was going to tell about art and everything. And basically like having that creative force driving you towards, you know, a goal or something. And very quickly, I was just in shock of how much was coming across through its imagery. Like, even just the simple shot of starting in her bedroom, and it just shows her, like, drawing and everything, and it takes its time. Like, it literally lingered on that shot for a while before the title card popped up. Yeah, there's so much to take in with like the way her room is, the way things are on the floor. And that's one thing that I really liked about this movie is just the imagery of everything, how much it conveys in just kind of like landscape shots, you know, just absolutely amazing. There's so much visual storytelling that's done, and I noticed it a lot on a rewatch, just how incredible it was. And seeing these two interact, and seeing how driven she is to kind of be, I guess, technically like the best was super, super interesting and enthralling. And I guess the flip side that I enjoyed so much is technically, I guess, like when you're growing up, you know, you kind of define what you think is the best. And usually it kind of pertains to like technicality and like how advanced something looks. But I love the reversal of it's kind of actually up to interpretation, you know? And that's how we get as we get older. It's like, you know, what you find enjoying is different from what you find enjoying. And what you think is the best is different from what you think is the best. You know, it's all up to our own personal interpretation. And I think that she discovers that journey as she meets, you know, Kiyomoto, like to find out that, oh, she's actually a really big fan of yours and she thinks you're one of the greatest artists ever. Like that was just such a great flip of, she was almost envious of this other person. She was jealous, and it got to the point where she basically quit. And then to have the role reversal of actually this whole time, this person who you thought was so great and you held to such a high standard thinks of you in such a high perspective that you've inspired them countless times to push for their dreams. I absolutely love that reversal. And I love that this story really touched upon that, you know, because it's one thing to create art and obviously you put it out in the world and you're looking for obviously like a lot of criticism or maybe just to try to connect with other people. But just to have that touch of meeting someone else who's like you is just super understated in stories like this. I love this movie. It was so great. I guess, Wallied, what was going through your head, I guess, watching this?
Yeah, for me, watching it for like the first time, I was very surprised with just how far it was taking the approach of showing somebody who is very passionate about something, and especially, I think the scene that shocked me the most when I watched it was where everybody's praising her. Everyone is saying nice things about her comics. But there's that one person who tells her, like, yeah, it's not as good as the other story. And you can tell just from that, like, it really breaks her. And it's something I was very surprised by watching it for the first time because it really goes to show you that even though everyone is praising you and maybe giving you all the accolades and everything, it really just shows you that even with one piece of criticism, sometimes that can like really affect your work. Or it can really make you want to work even harder. And I love just that whole montage of you see like just her basically like going through, working through like all the different drawings and trying to be like a better drawer. But you also kind of see the consequence of that, of she is not spending time with friends and family. She's isolating herself from a lot of things. And I was just very surprised first time watching it, just how far it was going with that. Like just con of being like a artist and especially being a manga like drawer and everything.
Yeah, it was amazing.
I think the whole thing about like comparing yourself to others is very powerful in this movie, and it's something at least I personally relate to. Just like always seeing someone who's better than you and just being like, wow, what am I doing with myself if there's all these other people just doing way better than me? And then it just kind of like turns into a whole negative thing, and then like the thing you enjoy doing almost becomes just like work at the end of the day. And it's something that you're like, oh, I'm working towards this, but I need to be doing better. And then it's just like it spirals out of control into just like how Fujino is, of just like it becomes her whole life. Like that is like that shot of her just drawing at different desks. It's like you can see it's like just consuming so much of her time. And then like when she finally meets Kiyomoto for the first time, it doesn't show off of her face, but you can tell how like shocked she is about like how Kiyomoto feels about her. And at that point, she was already done with art. She's already like going back and just like hanging out with friends at school, and she's just kind of like done. She's over it. And she just lies to her, saying that like, oh, I'm gonna be doing my own story now. And then like they form a bond over something they're both passionate about, which is also just a super interesting thing that the movie shows as well, is just like how a shared passion brings people together, and just like that relationship just blossoms off of their shared passion for art, which I thought was just super, super beautiful and well portrayed. Especially like after she was like down to like work with her, that scene of her just like skipping home in the rain is like, wow, such a beautiful scene. Like you can just see all the complex emotions going through her head in that moment. Like she's happy about what's going on. She's angry because she doesn't know how to feel about like art and the person that she always just wanted to be better than, appreciating her and her art. It's just like a whole jumble of emotions that are just portrayed so beautifully, especially with like that piano music that comes in. It's just such an amazing, amazing shot.
And visually too, like I loved after the montage of, you know, months go by and she's been practicing, you know, trying to attain perfection. And she has like those stacks of books basically of like all her work that she's been doing. And then the introduction of Kiyomoto going down that hallway, and you just see stacks of books like going down that hallway leading to her room. I'm like, that's absolutely amazing. I love when stories and movies do that. Like they tie those similarities between characters, and in one shot they show you, oh yeah, this person's been through what you had just seen, but it's to an insane degree, you know? And so much was conveyed like in that introduction, and it's like, you haven't even seen who this person is yet you're already like feel sympathy towards this other, you know, artist. It's like, whoa, that's crazy. And after she's done skipping in the rain, I love it so much. The shot, the couple of shots visually of she just got the kind of like, you know, praise that she was been searching for, obviously with this other artist who she's been envious of. And it inspires her and it drives her to, you know, draw again. And just after coming home in the rain, just the shot of the rain trail leading from the front door all the way to her room to show that, yeah, when she got home, she didn't waste time at all. She went straight to her room and started drawing again. I just was like, that is amazing. And it's amazing, like visual storytelling, just showing like nothing else could have been on her mind in that moment. And I just love that. It was absolutely amazing.
It's like a burn for passion, like came back after that whole interaction, you know, because you see before she goes to meet like the girl, obviously, she's obviously just much more focused on her family and friends and on just different hobbies. And it was just kind of cool to see like that portrayed so well of like somebody getting their passion back just from like the interaction they had with somebody, and it becoming like a very big inspiration for her to like draw and write her story.
Yeah.
I think like with Kiyomoto, it's super interesting because like Fujino goes to school every day, so she has social relationships, she has stuff outside of art, but Kiyomoto has extreme social anxiety. She spends all her time at home. So Kiyomoto is like what Fujino wants to be, but Kiyomoto, like, you can tell like she is not happy at home. Like she wants to go out, she wants to make friends, but since she is at home, all her time is spent drawing. And I think that's like a super interesting commentary on like people who are like considered some of like the best artists of all time. Like a lot of their time is just spent working and working and working, and like well, it takes away from like some of the social interactions you have with people and just like things outside of the work itself, which is just, I don't know, it's super beautiful, like the dynamic between the two, because like they both kind of want to be each other in a way, and it's just like that's another thing that kind of like brings them together, and I just thought that was super, super amazing.
Countless times, especially on rewatch, just the music just adds so much emotion to a lot of the things. Again, everything feels, many shots in this movie just feel like just the most amazing landscape painting I've ever seen. But it can just be simple. Like it's just two characters drawing in a room, or it's just, you know, this wide shot of someone walking in the rain, you know, and yet it has like this amazing, like like I said, just a work of art, and it just attaches to your brain in the best way. And I don't know, just the way this was animated, it's almost like I hadn't seen an anime done in this way, and it really just helps it to kind of stand out. Yet it's for such like a grounded story that I'm like, I don't know, I just couldn't picture this looking any other way. It really aids to this whole story, and adds a lot of emotion to it as well. Just with the drawings and the emotions on the characters' faces, and the landscapes of everything just really make you feel something. And I don't know what it is, but definitely on rewatch, watching this whole thing, like I was just so attached to what was going on that it was getting me really, really emotional. And I was just kind of in awe of, wow, this is, it's a short movie. It's under an hour on its own. And yet it does what some of these 2-hour, 3-hour movies do in such a short amount of time. And that's just probably one of the biggest praises for this movie. It conveys so much with so little,
Yeah, it has a very unique style for sure. It definitely feels very stylistic while also kind of feeling a bit more minimal at the same time. And especially noticing it on my rewatch was just how like detailed a lot of like the characters' emotions were, especially the scene where she's like skipping through the rain, like Jonah was mentioning, where she's getting all these complex emotions, but it's like the way she just skips is like it's very subtle, but it's also very grounded, And I just was very surprised with a lot of the animation style throughout the film. It puts a big emphasis a lot on like hyper details, but also kind of like a more simplistic style of like animation.
And that's to me was a very great character moment of this. The film didn't need to focus too much on that, but that shot of her skipping through the rain, I don't know, it really helps you attach to the character in a great way to where I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of glad this is here, because if it wasn't, it adds a new layer to the character that I wasn't ready for, Yeah.
It's that like kind of feeling of joy that she hasn't really expressed too much all throughout the film, And I think it perfectly encapsulates it really well.
Yeah, especially like, I think for me, the rough lines of the characters, because they didn't do any like line cleanup, so you can see where lines kind of like fall off or like where they're not supposed to be, adds a lot to that, especially like the use of color in the first half is like very, very interesting, especially like I think Fujino's like lime green hoodie is just like, I don't know, it's such a beautiful color.
Yeah.
And then like once it starts raining and they meet for the first time, all the colors are like very, very muted. Like the colors just change, and it's just, it plays out into that and just build up to that scene, which feels like kind of like the end of that act of the characters, which is like just so amazing. Like I cannot praise the animation, the use of colors, and especially the soundtrack. Like the music was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
And were they trying to? I obviously we had the little post interviews when watching it the first time, but was this something that they were trying to convey, like from a story sense as well? Of like Kiyomoto draws these absolutely amazing backgrounds, that's like something that she's kind of, known for. And obviously Fujino focuses a lot more on the characters. And was the movie trying to tie into that? Because I noticed that on rewatch, like these backgrounds look amazing, photorealistic, just absolutely insane. And then the characters have those lines to them, and they're a lot more expressive, not as clear, Was that something that they were like going for?
So I think it's something that Fujimoto planned for his original manga, that they implemented into the movie so beautifully. Like the colors are again like so beautiful, and I think that just adds a layer of appreciation, because like you find out that Kiyomoto likes doing background art, then you kind of like pick up on the background. After that stuff, especially like when they go to, it's either a bookstore or a library, and she's picking up background art book and looking at it, and you can kind of just like appreciate it a little bit more through the character, because it's like somewhat a character you kind of are interested and care about, and so you're like interested in the passion with them, and so it's like kind of used as like they're like the vessel into those parts of a story, which I think is super interesting. So I would think, yeah.
Yeah, that was something I noticed on rewatch. It was just like, wow, that's actually really smart, and it really adds to the emotion of the story. So I guess after that, they get into obviously this kind of competition to create. They're creating like a one shot, right? Pretty much. And it goes through this montage of them like working together. Amazing. Like I just, the music in it,
Fantastic
the shots of
montage,
them
yeah.
drawing and everything. I was just, wow, this is so much. Again, so much is conveyed in such a short amount of time, yet it really, really works. And it's obviously setting up for something, but yeah, I just love that. I love the creativity that these two draw out of each other, you know? Like it's very much like,
Collaborative.
yeah, it's a push and pull, like in both directions of they're both really good on their own, but when they're together, they obviously can create something very, very unique, you know, to both of them. And it just speaks to like the creation of art in general. Like countless times, some of your favorite artists or whoever, it's not just them, you know, it's very much they have people in their lives that they look up to, they take inspiration from certain things. It's never just one person, you know, and some stories about art and things don't portray that sometimes, but this one portrays it to such an amazing degree. Yeah, I really love that montage of them working together. It's just awesome.
Yeah, it was a nice like thing, especially in the film, you know, and especially I think it works too because not only is it just like a great portrayal of the collaborative process, but it also shows and expands more on like their friendship, and you see how them working together, they have a healthy, almost a healthy relationship of sorts when they are working together. It's like they do bring out the best in each other, which I think is a very important thing. And I feel like it's a really underappreciated aspect of the collaboration process is that you're getting like the best aspects of each other. You know?
Yeah, I think also like what I really enjoy about this film is it shows like all aspects of creating art. You start off with Fujino and she's just it's almost like a hobby to her. She's just kind of enjoying it for the reactions and the people around her. And then it quickly turns into an obsession kind of thing. She like really wants to be the best, and it turns into a jealousy thing. And then after their relationship sparks, it turns into more of a friendship and
Partners.
more of an enjoyment thing. Yeah. So
It's amazing. One thing in the montage that it adds to the emotion because obviously later on something does happen. Definitely on rewatch, it's like you just want it to kind of, you know, end there. You're like, all right, this is a nice story.
The happy ending.
Yeah. Slowly, I love the connections. Obviously, after they win that contest, like we were saying, now it touches on more of the personal side of both of them. Obviously, Fujino, like you said, is very outgoing, has a lot of things in her life that, you know, Kiyotaka may not have. But I love that Fujino takes the time to help her friend, you know, give her what she wants, you know, like she may be scared of it. She obviously is nervous about it, but Fujino has been on that other side to be like, you know what? It's going to be fine. Like you're worried over nothing pretty much. And it ultimately helps Kiyotaka to kind of find herself and her own voice, you know? And I think that speaks to the side of art that people don't realize. Like sometimes it's very hard to kind of find your own place in things. And, you know, sometimes you need someone else to help with that. A lot of the greatest artists, like they say like, oh, if it wasn't for this film or if it wasn't for this, you know, thing I saw, I wouldn't be here, you know? And obviously Kiyotaka, like she kind of gets out of her shell a lot more and realizes, you know, I've been afraid of this thing this whole time, people, interactions. And it's kind of somber, but obviously you feel happy for, you know, Kiyotaka. Like in their first montage, they're running through, you know, the city holding hands and everything. And then the second time around, obviously they're like slowly letting go. And you can tell that as they're getting older, they're growing apart, kind of, you know, they still have the connection of, you know, creating manga and things like that, but they both have their own aspirations as for what they want.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not a bad thing. It's not obviously it sucks, like you want these two to work together, but you know, at the end of the day, they both are in it for different reasons. And definitely the second time around, I was getting really emotional in those montages, and I was like, damn, this is really, really sad. But, you know, you're happy for both of them because they are getting what they want.
I think the scene that perfectly kind of shows that is where Kiyomoto is looking at that book of like the backgrounds, like all the background art. I think that like perfectly shows like that's where her passion lies. You know, she definitely is very passionate about background art, and she even wants to go to school for it so she can get even better. And you see kind of like with that argument that her and Fujino have, it just hits so hard because it's like I think the scene I think that scene also kind of just made me upset too, because it's like just the line that Fujino says where she's like, oh, I can just get somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like it sucks because it shows like how people are so easily replaceable with things like that, you know.
Yeah.
And it might just be even like a worse version of like backgrounds, and I feel like it perfectly kind of shows like people will take stuff like that for granted, you know.
And visually too, like them talking in that area, obviously the sun setting, it really is like it's coming to an end, you know, like it shows visually like
the sunset.
They're coming to the end of this relationship, and it's very, very sad. And obviously, you know, I think they say Fujino says some things that obviously maybe doesn't completely mean, and it's just trying to convince your friend to stay with you because it's comforting, you know, like obviously you've created so much together, but at the end of the day, like, you know, you don't want to hold your friend back in any way, and vice versa. Your friend doesn't want to hold you back in any way. Like you both want each other to succeed and do well. But yeah, the emotion is just so high in that scene, and it's just, oh man, I was getting sad, very sad watching that.
It's like an impulsive response from Fujino.
Yeah.
She feels like she, like Kiyomoto got what she wanted from Fujino, and now she wants to move on. So it feels like almost like an attack on her character, which is just like why it results in her having that impulsive response of just being like, oh, I can get someone else, which is like super, like just a hard moment. It's like when the pacing just really slows down and goes to a halt for a bit, which I find super fascinating too, is because like every moment before that you have like such enjoyable moments, and it's like also like a part of their childhood because they're in high school now, and I feel like it plays into like how quickly time goes by when you're having fun, which I think is super interesting because like a lot of those moments before are just enjoyments of like their passions or together, and as soon as like their first argument happens, like everything kind of just stops for a bit. And I want to like jump back, like when they get money for winning with their one shot and they go out and just like to the city for the first time, like when Kiyomoto says, I'm glad I came out of my room, that like line hits so hard. And then like 5 minutes later, it's like, oh, now she wants to go and do her own thing. Like you can tell she is super grateful to Fujino for forcing her to go out of her room and do stuff she wasn't really comfortable with, but now she wants to like take things into her own hands and not rely on Fujino anymore. But Fujino doesn't see it that way, and so that whole relationship between that is super, super hard to just watch and see, because you can see both sides of what's going on, and it's like, it's tough. Like sometimes creative differences do just bring people apart.
Yeah. And I think too, like that scene also just like perfectly shows how having a friend and having like somebody like a creative partner can help, not only just with your mental health, but just like with the creative process in general. I feel like people kind of will sometimes take friends for granted, but it's like they really do. The best types of friends can really push you to be a better artist, or to just even inspire you to make better art and just better backgrounds like she does. You know, like her going into the city, she definitely does become a better background artist from that experience of her going into town and her getting to experience all like the different things that she never knew. You know, I think it really perfectly shows that really well.
And the aspect that's tied into it too is that it's kind of in your face, but it's like, oh, this is also like a kind of really great coming of age story as well, you know?
Yeah,
it has that side tied into it. Obviously, they're very young when this starts out. But when they go to, obviously, they're splitting apart. It's like, oh, damn, they're actually at the end of high school pretty much, you know? And that's a lot of time to pass, yet it doesn't feel like rushed or it didn't feel like jarring or we skipped over anything important. It felt very natural and it was just like, damn, this is sad, you know? But in a way, it ties into, obviously, you know, time passes by like a lot faster than we realize, you know?
Yeah. And I think as you get older too, it's like everything just, you know, I feel like the montages perfectly kind of show us like these are like fragments of like the past few years, you know? Because when we do think of those memories, they're always just fragments from like things that happened a couple years ago, but yet you can still have clear memories of those.
Hence the name.
Yeah, you can look. Yeah, no,
And
look back.
there's obviously like, there's that side that every single one of us has felt. It's happened to me multiple times. You know, it's really hard when you have friends for such a long time, and then it's like, oh yeah, like they're moving away now. Like it's sad. Like I'm not going to be able to see this person as much as I want to, you know, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, you know, I'm kind of becoming an adult. Like if I'm going to want to do what I want to do, now is the time. Like I can't really wait. You have great opportunities and you have to take them, you know. Every single one of us has probably felt that at some point of like losing a friend. And this movie really captures it in just such a short amount of time, and it hits really hard. Yeah,
It's a very melancholic feeling for sure.
yeah. So after they split up, Fujino is obviously creating more. Gets to create basically, you know, a manga that is something that she's been wanting to do.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad too, because I think when she was younger, there's a line that she says that, you know, mangakas pretty much just sit all day drawing, and like that's something that I don't really want to do or something, you know. And I believe she says that to her friend at one point.
Yeah, she says it at the beginning.
Yeah, and it's like that's kind
It's like a foreshadowing, really.
It really is
Sad foreshadowing detail.
And obviously, like you sit alone, you know, just doing what you have to do. Now, when it shows, obviously she's older now. She has found some success in certain things. This is the part where I'm like, I kind of wanted to see maybe a little bit more of her, you know, trying to navigate her way now alone, you know? That's something that maybe I wish they could have expanded on a little more. Obviously, it's very quick after their friendship ends that we kind of get the resolution to both of their stories. But I guess probably what it was lining up for is that past that point, now she's really on her own because something happens plot-wise.
Yeah.
But I do wish they showed maybe just a little bit more, maybe kind of add some scenes of her, you know, realizing like, okay, the things I said to Kiyomoto, maybe I shouldn't have said those things, you know, like I had a real connection with this person.
Yeah.
And why would I stoop that low pretty much? But I will say at this part was definitely where I was like, dang, I want a little bit more. And especially rewatching it, it would have elevated it even more for me probably. But it still does a really good job. I'm not trying to knock on it or anything. It still conveys a lot.
Yeah. I feel like for me, I would probably just say my only problem is I do wish we had a little bit more time with Kiyomoto, especially because she did rely a lot on Fujino talking and doing kind of like all like the mostly socialization. So I was kind of curious to kind of see if they were going to explore that in the film. And I do kind of wish we got like her side, Kiyomoto's side, because we kind of get it a little bit in like the like what if moment in the film, but I did want to see more of like her like trying to be better at like getting more social and maybe expanding more on like her art and background pretty much. So
Yeah.
I would just say for me that was kind of my one problem. But
For me, I don't know. I kind of just went into it and just like got interested in their story and then how it all played out. It's very bittersweet, I think, because like I do wish it would be longer, but I also feel like it is kind of ingenious the way it makes it short, because it is like how short-lived some things can feel like.
Yeah,
you know,
for
like
sure.
having this moment with someone and sharing it, and then how quickly that's taken away, and how quickly you have to move on from that. Like things don't stop for you, so you kind of things just have to move on. So it's like it's bittersweet. Like I see myself, I'm like, man, I do wish I would love to see more with Kiyomoto, as well as like how Fujino is doing near the end of the film. But I'm also like, again, like it is, I don't know, it's an interesting, I feel like the length is an interesting message upon the story as well.
Wow, makes a lot of sense. So Fujino releases this manga. What's it called? Shark Kick.
Yeah, play on Chainsaw Man.
That was cool. I
kind
caught
of-
the similarities pretty fast.
yeah, I do kind of wish we got like a visualization of what the Shark Kick story was like, because I know we got it at the beginning with like the manga.
Yeah, that
So
would have
I
been
was-
cool.
They got
Yeah.
the,
Maybe like some scenes or something. with,
Yeah, just like
cool
a small
animation.
scene.
they had the
Yeah.
little panels, which is from Chainsaw Man, but
Yeah.
they switched the character's hair.
Yeah.
So the main character Denji has black hair, and then the other girl's
Okay.
blonde, which is
Yeah.
I thought that was so funny.
And it's cool. Like, there's a little montage of obviously the releases. You know, some are popular, some are not as popular, and that's where I kind of wish we got a little more with Fujino. Obviously, I wanted to see her reaction to this all. You know, is this something that is
She's
affecting
passionate
her?
about, yeah.
Is it something that obviously is like, dang, you know, where do I see myself with this manga in general? But I really liked it, and obviously the visual nods to Chainsaw Man was really cool, especially with the covers. Instantly, I was like, "Oh man, that's great!
Oh, cool.
That's so awesome." And then while she is drawing, I believe this is after the first run of Shark Kick, right? Isn't it? It's done at that point, and
Yeah,
we're waiting for
I
the
think
next
part. Yeah.
Okay. So it's at that point where the story just totally flips and takes you for a ride. Fujino is working, and she is watching the news in the background. And it kind of visually shows. Obviously, she's just by herself, kind of like she said when she was a kid, just drawing. And I will just say the animation while she's drawing is just absolutely amazing. The sounds and everything.
Yeah, the ambiance
Yeah,
in the
just
room is perfect.
Awesome. And then on the news, it said that a man went into an art school and murdered 12 people with a pickaxe, and 3 other were injured. And you could tell instantly that she panics, you know. And I love it a lot. Pulls out her phone right away and immediately tries to call. She tries to call Kiyomoto, right? And just the the heartbreak of someone not answering. Again, I think, Wallied, we touched on this in one of our other reviews. Just that sound of calling someone and it just ringing, you know?
Yeah.
When you want to hear an answer can be
Anxiety-inducing.
Yeah.
Very
just
much.
really just flip you like on your head of just like, what the fuck? And then it just quickly cuts, and you see that obviously she drops the phone. Someone else calls her. Who calls her?
I think, to my knowledge, it's Kiyomoto's parents.
Oh,
I
okay.
think, yeah.
And she just drops the phone. And there, in this second half, there's a lot of close-up shots of Fujino's kind of eyes with like her hair and everything. just the expressions on her face just say a lot, and really just sinks your heart right away. And then it just goes through it, and then it cuts, and obviously now you realize Kiyomoto has passed away. Just the shot of her picture. Oh man, it's heartbreaking. Like, it just shows it in a room. Obviously, there's all these flowers, and it's just an empty room. And I don't know why that hit really, really hard for me. It kind of says a lot to her character. Obviously, she was always very closed off and everything. And just to see that kind of shown past, her death, really hits hard. And it really drives you into this deeply emotional state. Like, I swear the rest of the movie, like, man, I felt like at any second I was going to start crying. And
It's a gut punch.
yeah,
for sure.
really
It's
just
a hard
hits
watch.
you. Jonah, I guess when you were first reading this, what was going through your mind? Obviously, you're going along with this story. Were you expecting it?
So I think one of the big things I really like about Fujimoto is he always is unpredictable, and there's always a moment in his stories that just like shock me. Like I can never ever predict what's happening. So as soon as that moment, like you find out that Kiyomoto is dead, it's just like the tone shifts. So you're like, I had no idea it was going in this direction, and just like seeing it in Fujino's face, like it looks like her heart was torn out. She is like so hollow. Like it's a hard watch, and yeah, I think that is just such an interesting way to take it, and especially I feel like it adds more to the themes later on. So yeah, no, any of his stories I can just never understand like what's gonna happen next, or I don't know how you guys, any of you expect that at all?
I really didn't, honestly. I was so shocked, like, watching it. I just was like, God.
There was part of it for me, like,
Yeah.
obviously hearing it, like going into it, I heard this was going to be emotional, and the trailer kind of hints at that a little bit too.
Yeah.
It feels like, okay, maybe there's a different side of the story that I'm not considering, but it hit so abruptly, and obviously I think it is meant to go for that kind of shock that
Unexpected.
Fujino feels, and it really, man, just hit you right away.
Yeah.
It was hard.
I think for me, what was like the most unexpected part was definitely after, when she goes to Kiyomoto's house, and she sees like the comic strip that she looked at, and she starts to rip it apart, and a little bit of it goes into like slips into like the door. I think that part was like the part that shocked me the most, and it was like, okay, this is kind of what the movie's getting at.
Yeah.
And I was like, I couldn't believe it, but I really loved that part of the film so much.
Yeah.
Plays into something I really feel like hit me personally is like those what if moments, like when the strip falls through the door, it turns into like an alternate reality where Fujino never meets Kiyomoto, and she goes on to do stuff on her own, and you see that she flourishes on her own at some point, and she goes to the university, and then she's about to be attacked by the person with the pickaxe, but then Fujino comes in and
Does karate.
and does
Which
karate
is a funny
and attacks her.
foreshadowing detail that
And
I'm
it's-
happy came back into play later.
Yeah,
Sorry, but,
no, you're fine. And it's just like it's so heartbreaking because like that she's already dead, and they share this like small beautiful moment on like when she's about to be pulled into the ambulance, where they have the moment again where they like are gonna collaborate. She's like, I'm doing manga again, be my assistant, and it's like then it snaps right back into reality where the truth is she's dead, and Fujino is just having to deal with that. I think it just really hits me personally because I have a lot of moments where I feel I'm like, what if I did this instead? Like, how would that have played out? And I just like, it's like such a human aspect that I feel like I've never seen done in any other movie for me personally, as someone who is in the creative aspect of things like in art and stuff. So I don't know how you guys thought about like that alternate what if moment.
I liked it, and it really drove the emotion home. Like you said, obviously, it's kind of depressing seeing this alternate reality, but it does fill you with that kind of sense of no matter how things play out, like fate always kind of is gonna show up in your life, you know. And I think that's something that was meant to show with their first introduction in general. Is obviously she goes to the house, she's sent over there to give the diploma and everything. She goes to the door, you know. At that point, you feel like, okay, this is obviously these two are gonna meet at some point. But I think with her drawing the comic and it, you know, falling at the right moment, and at that point, I feel like what that's meant to show is like fate kind of takes over, you know, of that thing, the comic strip falling, going in every direction, you know, and it just perfectly goes under the door. It's like, no, you two were meant to meet at this point, you know, like fate took over that situation because she didn't want to go into the room. Kiyomoto didn't want to come out of the room, you know. At some point, one's going to leave, but fate kind of takes over and is like, no, you two were supposed to meet at this point. Yeah, I love that. Obviously, in our lives and everything, you look back on certain moments and you do realize, like, you know, as unfortunate as that situation was, you know, I was kind of a passenger at this point in time, you know. Sometimes there are moments in your life where that happens, you know, like for the most part, you're driving, you have two hands on the wheel, but at some point you let go and fate takes over the wheel and it takes you where it wants you to go. You know, there's moments like that in everyone's lives, you know, and it's portrayed so simply with just that comic strip falling through the air. So yeah, when it came back and obviously it goes under that door, and seeing that other side now, I was not ready for that. I didn't think the story was going to do that. Seeing her, Kiyomoto as a kid, had a really kind of heartwarming feel to it that I think happens to us when we lose people. You kind of go back through, you know, the memories of your life and kind of relive them, you know, and you're like, you know, what if this didn't happen? What, you know, is this something, what if we didn't meet at this point? Where would we both be? You kind of ask those questions in your head. And I'm really glad the story showed that. And there's a nice bit of levity in these alternate realities that really help you kind of process everything. Obviously the humor, her drawing the little comic of her saving her was amazing. Her showing up in general just felt really awesome. It was like a great moment of like yes, that's what should have happened, you know. And not even to mention like the scene where the guy shows up to the school, the animation with the expressions in that guy's face. Really scared me and it really freaked me out.
Super fluid. It's
yeah.
like so movie and no one's like that. And
Yeah.
Ew.
I swear,
Uncanny.
it really scared me, and just the unpredictability of people was conveyed really well. In you know, it's just a short kind of subplot of this story. You feel his emotions very sincerely. And obviously he says, like, you know, someone at this school stole his art, you know, that's why he's there. And it's like, oh man, this is hard, you know?
Yeah, but I guess it also just shows you how committed people are to their art, even they'll even go to ridiculous extremes like that.
Yeah. But I guess, Wallied, what did you think of this kind of alternate reality segment part of the movie?
I thought it was fantastic, and I thought it was like a perfect way to kind of like encapsulate what the film was going for, and that, yes, even though what happened was terrible, you know, and it shows that even through the what ifs and like the different endeavors they go into life, they still kind of connect, you know, in a way, and it kind of just shows that like fate and destiny does come back to them eventually, even if they hadn't met the first time, like they were gonna meet at some point eventually. And I think that whole like what if, I think perfectly kind of encapsulates that, and it kind of shows the grief of dealing with the loss. It's like you have all those questions of like what ifs, and I think showing that grief in that way, I think was also really powerful, you know, because it's like she's almost beating herself up for like encouraging Kiyomoto, and I thought it was just perfectly well done, and I
Yeah.
thought it was just kind of heartbreaking, especially when you're dealing with loss. You always have those what ifs and everything, and I think it just shows it in such a emotionally heartbreaking way, you know.
Yeah, it was great.
In that moment after, like, reading it for the first time, I have never cried reading something, but in this book, it
Wow.
like hit me so hard. As like, you get that shot of Fujino drawing with just like the blank white background, and she's just talking about how much she hates drawing and how tedious it is and how much effort it is and all this toxicity she has with drawing. And then Kiyomoto just asks her, "Why do you draw then?" And then there's just that montage of them together sharing their passion for drawing and their love for it. And it's just, it's so beautiful. Like, you can just see how much enjoyment they both get out of working on pieces together and just how great their friendship is. And it's
Yeah.
just like, it hits so hard. I think like that is the final line of the whole movie. Why do you draw? It's just so, so powerful.
No, I loved it.
Yeah.
And then the music obviously just
Fantastic.
hits so hard. And it really just, you're not, I don't know, you're in like a different headspace because obviously it's sad knowing that this character passed away, but you also get that sense of, Fujino's going to continue on. Like, that's really what, Kiyomoto would have probably wanted her to do, And they obviously drifted apart, years before that, but it still doesn't affect how you feel towards that person, Because obviously I can recount friends I've had, in high school or whatever, and you still always think of them in that same way. You always remember, like, how you guys were in high school, the way you guys joked around. And it's like that moment you get back in touch with them, it's like no time has passed, like you both bring out those parts of each other in, a great way. And it's sad, obviously, knowing that, Kiyomoto's not there anymore. And obviously it hits super hard when it goes back to Fujino as an adult and she's reading, obviously, the Shark Kick manga, and it's like, we'll continue in volume 2. And it's like, how do you do this now that your friend's gone, How do you put yourself in that headspace,
How do you learn to move on?
Yeah, it's just really, really hard. And again, the imagery and everything and how it's conveyed is just amazing. She obviously takes that blank strip, and goes back and starts working again. I love that. I love just the shot of, again, it's how the movie starts. Obviously, she's a kid, creating in the room and everything. And it's like, here she is as an adult, knowing all she knows, yet she's still, wanting to achieve that dream,
Yeah.
Really, really amazing. Yeah.
I love that the last shot is like the wind moves the little comic strip.
Yeah.
I almost kind of see it as like, even though Kiyomoto's gone, Kiyomoto's spirit is kind of there with her in the room.
Yeah. And that's the first time she goes into that room,
Yeah.
And that's the first time we see inside of that room. And just to see the comics that she saved as a kid, of her drawings was just like, oh man, that hits really hard. And then obviously the big moment, well, not the big moment, but the one that just really affected me a lot is seeing her signed, jacket on the wall, on the door. I didn't notice it the first time around, but it's like the moment she walks in, you can see it on like the side of the door. And seeing that again is just like, oh man, that's why must you do this to me? And I was fighting back some tears, and I just internalized it, and it's gonna come out later on at some other point when I'm alone. So yeah.
I think like the opening shot, starting with Fujino at the desk drawing, to the ending shot with her at the desk drawing, is like just it's just a super powerful message too. It's just like
Yeah.
there's so many layers to it, which is like you can see it as like it does take up so much of your life, and also like for people who create, like is just things you just have to constantly do, and especially for her, like at the beginning she sees it as like something as fun, and then at the end it's more of like
A
I
job.
see it as like a job, yeah, or something that like she just needs to do right now, even though like it seems like she doesn't really want to do
Yeah.
anything in the moment. Like she needs time to grieve and to cope.
I love the visual basically symbol of a doorway. I feel like this movie has that, and it calls back to that a lot of like, you know, what if your life was leading up to a moment, and you know, it's shown in like the symbol of a doorway, like the difference between you now and you crossing over into this other part of your life. You have to go through that door, you know? And it calls back to that many times, because it's obviously when they were kids, Fujino's on one side, Kiyomoto's on the other, and now that she's there as an adult, it's like, what if she didn't go through that door and didn't find all that part that Kiyomoto had of Fujino, all that inspiration, you know, all the things she saved over, you know, would she have continued drawing? Would she, you know, like Fujino might have just called it quits at that moment, but because she chose to walk through that door and see that side, helps to push her forward, you know, because that's what she needed in that moment. I know you guys kind of see it as obviously like her continuing to work, but I guess what I saw it as was like, it's her purpose, you know, that's what she's there to do. That's why that's her purpose on earth and in this time, is to, you know, inspire people. And I guess I took it as that, as obviously her continuing on without her friend, but almost taking her life and the inspiration that Kiyomoto gave her and breathing new life to it in her work, in her drawings, in, you know, her manga and everything. And it was just a really powerful moment. And then obviously the movie ends, and I was just like, wow, that was amazing. I really enjoyed it. It's amazing. And I haven't had I guess, manga or, you know, short story really affect me in such a great way. I don't know where I classify this, but at the end, I don't even think it really matters, because it's like, it conveys everything that a normal movie would. So I guess I wouldn't really classify this as like a short anyways. Obviously, there are things I wish it would expand on. You know, maybe there were some other sides we could have shown, but it really conveyed everything that I feel like a normal, you know, feature-length movie would. I didn't really feel like I was missing that much. I don't know if you guys felt the same way.
No, I was honestly kind of shocked, just even rewatching it, just how I was surprised how it wasn't at all like underwhelming. Like it just felt like the whole story felt like it was perfect for like a short, like 60-minute movie, you know? Especially just with like their relationship and everything. And it shows that sometimes these things can go by fast, even if, you know, and they can be short-lived, and you got to try to not take those things for granted, you know? Obviously, I would say I do wish they expanded a bit more on Kiyomoto's character, because I did really love her character a lot, and just I kind of related a little hard to her character, and I did kind of want to see a bit more of her journey of just like her trying to deal with the social anxiety, but that would probably be my only gripe with the film. But the music hits just so hard, and it fits so perfectly in every scene that it's in. It never feels like it's forced or trying to be manipulative at all.
I think like the biggest advantage of what makes this film feel like it has so much in its short runtime is just like, we've said it a couple of times, of just how layered it is. There's so many different things you can pick apart in each scene. Like going back to the final scene, like I kind of see it as like a struggle for her to continue on, but it also feels like it's a jumble of emotions. Like she is also just like going through the struggle with creation, but also as a motivation for her to continue on their legacy as characters. And I think like I wrote down every single theme I thought this movie had, and have a lot. So there's like obsession, jealousy, the toxicity of comparing yourself to others, friendship, artistic growth, passion, grief, regret, and what ifs, and the healing power creativity can bring to someone who is hurting. So there's like so many different things that this story tells, which I think is just, I honestly don't know how it packs this much into this short
Really,
film, but it's
though.
like there's so much to just unpack and digest, and it's just really, really, really just amazing. Like,
Yeah. I can't recommend it enough. I've been telling pretty much everyone I know to watch this movie. I told my sister to go see it when it was in theaters, and now that it's on streaming, I've mentioned it to her again. I'm like, no, you need to watch this movie. Like, this is one of the best movies of the year, and it does a lot for, animation and a story about artists. Those tend to be something that I connect with a lot, I know Wallied, we've talked about a lot of stories now where it's about, creation and the inspiration of artists. Yeah. And this movie was just right in my wheelhouse. And it does a lot in its visuals. It does a lot in its performances, its music, its direction. And yeah, it's definitely in one of my top movies of the year. And I just can't recommend it enough. I really just want to expose as many people as I can to this story. It is amazing. And I was definitely not ready for it. I guess with Fujimoto in general, I will say I haven't really connected with too much of his, but it was nice to see this other side of him. And I love it when artists do that. I love it when artists are known for obviously super out there kind of ideas, and then you get to see a different side to them. I love it when artists step outside of their box and go for that. So yeah, this really elevated Fujimoto for me. The story and the movie was just amazing.
That's what I hope it does with more people, is I feel like if you've heard the name, you just know Chainsaw Man. If you don't, you might have heard of Chainsaw Man. But I hope people see this and just don't see him as just the Chainsaw Man guy, because he has other stories that are completely different from one another. And it's just a very personal piece. And I think because of that, there's a lot to be said in the story.
I think for me, obviously, I'm a very big newcomer to Fujimoto. I haven't really watched or read any of the mangas, so to watch this was like a really just unique and just special experience to show and portray animators, and not just animators, but also like manga artists in a very respectful and creative way that it just hits so hard on like an emotional, personal level. I love the way that it portrays the collaborative process. Can't really think of another film that's portrayed the collaborative process as heartbreaking and as emotionally driven as this film has. It's definitely in my top 3 of like my favorite films of the year, and it's one that's stuck with me so much since I saw it, and even rewatching it now, it's just like I feel like in a couple of years this will hit even more harder than it already is right now. I think score-wise for me, I would probably say like a 9 out of 10.
Nice.
Obviously, I do kind of wish it expanded a little bit more on a few things, but obviously I feel like that's kind of the point of the story, you know? And I think it perfectly gets everything across more than I think like a 2-hour movie could, you know?
Yeah.
The fact it can use like a shorter pace and like a shorter runtime, I think shows just how easily you can portray a very hard-hitting emotional story in a short span of time.
Definitely. I was not ready for this film. It wasn't on my radar at all. It came out of nowhere and really is now a big part of my life at this point. And that's usually my favorite films. They just come out of nowhere, and they forever changed my life. I always joked with some of my favorite movies, for instance, like Mad Max, my life exists in 2 different periods now. There's before Mad Max and there's after Mad Max. And I guess this film, I put it in the same way, you know, like there's before I saw Look Back, and now there's after. And my life can be defined in those 2 eras now. Again, one of my biggest pluses of the movie in general for me is you can find inspiration anywhere, you know? I love the first half of this movie where obviously she's very down on herself because she doesn't see, obviously, her art technically, I guess, isn't as good as someone else's art, but the other artist found inspiration in what she was doing. And I love that. That is something that I feel like needs to be told to everyone. Technically, your work may not be as good as someone else's, but it doesn't matter because people find inspiration anywhere they want. And I love that so much. Obviously, there are movies that I don't like, but it doesn't mean that you can't find inspiration in those movies or films, pieces of art, anything. It's up to interpretation. And that is such a needed message for creators and artists in general. I do wish it was a little longer. There were some things that I wish was expanded on. I guess now that I'm trying to think about it, in instances where I have seen that in movies, and especially with different animated stories, where they add things that weren't a part of the original source material. And sometimes that can come across very jarring, and you're like, this doesn't really match up to the greatness that is the original piece of writing, you know? I guess one of the instances I'll bring up is The Killing Joke, which is a Batman graphic novel. They adapted it into an animated movie, and they realized this is too short to show in theaters. Let's add on a piece that will make it theatrical runtime. So they added on like 20 minutes that happened before the story. And the writing in that first 20 minutes sucks compared to you can just even tell with the shift. The moment you get to the actual story, you're like, okay, this is like two different things. And for some reason, they try to make it seem like it's one. So I'm not really going to say that, you know, if they did add on stuff to this, it may not have worked. So I guess in my overall score, how that's going to affect it, I don't know. It sucks. I've given out a lot of them recently, but it's a 10 out of 10 for me. I just can't recommend this movie enough. It's short. There may be some emotions that are left on the table, but like Jonah said, with everything that fits into this short runtime, it is astonishing and it is amazing. And the fact that we listed off so many different genres and things and emotions that are put into this, and then at the end of it, you're like, that was only an hour? How did you do that? How did that happen? But it did happen, and we're here for it. So it's 10 out of 10 for me.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm with Nabati on this one.
Cool.
I mean, yeah, Fujimoto is my favorite writer right now for a reason. I just really like his stories. I really like how personal they are. And if I would say anyone who is interested in his work and they want to try out Chainsaw Man, don't go into it thinking that it's going to be some like action story. It is actually a very more personal story with the main character. And I love how he delves into all of his stories. It's just nothing I've ever seen before. Very unique. I love the shock factor that all of them bring to me when reading his stuff. It's just nothing I've ever experienced just consuming a medium before. It is like absolutely just an insane thrill rush of an experience. Look back, super amazing, very, very sad personal story. I think if anyone pursues any creative passion of sorts, can definitely consume this, watch it, read it, and get something out of it. With how layered it is just such a beautiful and just layered introspective look into what it means to make art.
10 out of 10, Jonah?
10 out of 10. I know I've only given 2 10s every time I've hopped on here, but let me preface. I've seen like over 200 different anime, and the only thing I've given 10 out of 10s is I think about 8 things.
Okay,
So
nice.
I don't have that many, I promise. But
We've been on a string of them, me and Wallied.
Yeah.
But granted, we're talking about what? 30, 40 years of movies. So
yeah,
I'm like,
it's a bit different.
Yeah.
it just kind of lined up in the right way.
I broke my 10 out of 10 streak.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's still amazing. I still really love it.
I gotta
So, yeah,
ask
it's
you
a
guys,
9 out of
how do
10.
you determine if something's a 10 out of 10? Like, what do you, Like, what are the qualities that make something you watch a 10 out of 10?
I think just for me personally is if I look back on it and I can't find any negatives, obviously no pun intended. I look back on it and if I can't find anything wrong with it, I start putting it in the conversation of a 10. But then what ties into me personally is like, okay, how does it resonate with me? Is it something that affects my life in such a deep way? Is it something that, again, like I said, am I a different person coming out of it than I was going into it? And yeah, that's the case with this story. That's the case with all of my 10s out of 10s is I can look back on my life and yeah, the moment I left that movie or I left watching that thing, I am now forever changed. To me, like, come on, that's something that, okay, you have to put it on that level. Like, it really did its job, you know, and it surpassed that even after that. So I guess maybe that's something some people might not want to hear. Yeah, I do judge technical aspects, obviously, but I try to also tie it to like me personality-wise, you know. I never want to lose that in terms of, I guess, me critiquing things. Like, the moment I just become a technical person and I'm like, oh, technically it's proficient, it's a 10 out of 10. No. I never want to be that person at all.
We're all unique, so we should all give our own unique taste and voice on something. If you're just like, oh, yes, my favorite movie is like 2001: A Space Odyssey, it's like, I mean, I guess, yeah, but like,
But
did
why?
that movie resonate with you personally? Is that why it's your favorite movie? Or did you just like, no offense to anyone with their favorite movie, 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's just like, I don't know. I think you should just like a 10 out of 10, or at least to me, is like something that resonates with me personally. It affects me emotionally.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's perfect in any shape or form. The way I consumed it and experienced it changed my life. Sometimes that can just be nostalgia talking.
Yeah.
But sure. I'd rather talk to someone who enjoys something that a lot of people don't like and understand that than people who just like talk about the technical aspects of things. Because we can go on and on about the technical aspects of things, but like I want to know, like, when I talk to people about film and stuff, what clicks with them personally. Like I want to, because I find that super interesting, because like we all consume things differently. We all experience things differently. All of our past affects how we perceive things. So I want to learn more about that than anything else.
I guess that's something coming out of the second time viewing this that, like I mentioned in the beginning, like if I had seen this once and I graded it, I probably would have been at that 9 or 9.5. But because watching it the second time, I was like, you know, maybe sure there could have been more. I could have added something onto it, but it serves its purpose. It conveys so much in what it did. I'm like, I don't think it matters at the end of the day, you know, like, sure, I would have liked it, and I still now reading it or watching it again, yeah, I would have liked some of those, you know, added on pieces, but I guess maybe in that, me wanting to see more really shows how good of a movie and story this is, you know? Because sometimes I'll watch movies and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to see more. Please don't expand on it. Don't ever,
It doesn't stay.
Cut that out. Could have trimmed that out.
It doesn't stay its welcome too long.
Exactly.
Just like, I would take that any day over something that's like, okay, you should have stopped like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Why are we seeing this happen?
Wallied, when you're rating a 10, what's going through your head? You know, how do you go about it?
When I give something a 10, it's a mix of the technical aspects and the things where I'm like, wow, like this is really impressive, like on a technical and like a editing level and just like production design, everything. But it's also a mix of that, but also like my personal enjoyment of the film and just something that hits me hard, like emotionally and personally. So when I give something a 10, it's usually just, it's taking aspects from both, and I just feel like the story is perfect, the pace of the film is perfect, nothing ever drags, everything feels essential to the plot, and it also just resonates with me emotionally, regardless if it's happy or if it's sad or if it's something that it's fantastic, but probably don't want to watch again. You know, like a war film or like like a Grave of the Fireflies or like a
God.
film like that. But that's kind of how it's. I keep it pretty simple when I rate things a 10. You know, I don't have like a really complex reason for like a 10. Giving a film a 10 out of 10 it's just, is everything I feel essential to the story? Does it get everything across really well in a fun, creative way? And then just also if the film is like just hitting me on just every single emotion, you know, personally.
I agree. Like for me, it's like I know a 10 out of 10 when I see one. Like I don't know if I could definitively say like what my parameters are, but I can like watch something and be like, okay, yeah, that was a 10 out of 10.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think the other thing too also is if I'm like super invested in the film, like if I can't keep my eyes off the screen, you know, that I feel like also kind of helps with when I give something a 10, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of just the process of when I give something a 10.
No, same. And I feel like I can always recognize that feeling when I'm rewatching it. And I think I noticed it a lot with this movie. It was just like how much I didn't want to miss anything. How much I like, my attention wasn't really diverted with anything else. That's also goes into a lot of my 10s out of 10s is like, no matter how I am when I'm rewatching it, like my attention is just focused. Something about it, I don't know if it's like some unknown force that I'm not seeing, but my attention is just fixed on this film.
Yeah.
It always happens for me when I watch those movies. Because sometimes I'll watch other movies or TV and, you know, I'm kind of glancing at my phone. I'm kind of looking around.
You're not as super invested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know when we were
understand that.
talking about like Slumdog Millionaire, I was like, I watched a movie before that and it didn't really have my attention. Yet for some reason, when I put on Slumdog Millionaire, I don't know what it was. I was just focused and I was like, yeah, nothing can really divert my attention right now.
Exactly, yeah. That was like the first film I saw on the podcast where I loved it so much I saw it a second time before we recorded.
Yeah.
Because I was just so shocked about everything that was happening. And
I noticed it
it's
with
like,
this movie so much. I was just like, there could be something else going on in the world right now, yet for some reason, it's just me in this movie, and that's all it is. And that's all that really matters right now.
You just get so sucked into the characters and the world and everything.
Yeah.
And I think that plays also a big factor into when I give something a 10. It's like the rewatchability factor, you know?
Yeah.
It's like I want to go back and experience that again, you know? I want to see what I can pick up on or have a different perspective on that film, you know? So I think that also helps when I give something a 10 too.
Yeah, definitely.
One thing is like all my 10 out of 10s are like my children. I can't pick one. Like that's like
babies. Yeah,
my
exactly.
worst question that people ask me that I will not give an answer, and it frustrates people. Is like, what's your favorite anime movie show? I'm like, I can't pick one.
Yeah.
Like that is such a hard question for me. I have a lot of like shows, movie, anime that I really enjoy that are 10s that are all very different from each other, and I can't just pick one over the other. Like they all I feel like they all stand on the same level.
Yeah.
Of just like perfection to me.
I agree.
To quote Letterboxd, what would be your top 4?
Top 4?
Your Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it. Like, I actually couldn't do it. Like it'd be hard. That'd be hard. I think what I would narrow it down to is like give me a genre and then I can give you 5
okay.
in the genre.
Okay. That's kinda
like,
cool.
I think if we're just talking overall, it's too hard. That's too hard.
I think what it is each one kind of ties into like a different part of your own personality, you know?
Yeah. Your
and
taste in film.
And that's why I usually ask for like, you know, a top 10, and then I kind of say like, you don't have to put them in order, but it would definitely help me to better understand, you know, different aspects, especially if they name like an emotional film or they name like an action, you know, film or a period piece. I'm like, okay, that kind of puts me in the headspace of like who you are, you know?
I do like that too.
Yeah.
It's just like, I think the phrasing of it is like, what is your favorite? Or like, what are some of your favorite?
Oh, you like
It's
depressing
like-
movies. Or, oh, you like
Yeah.
you like crazy action films. you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was definitely like talking to Dylan, like when he mentions his top favorite movies. I'm like, these are all really emotional, like heavy films. Like, God.
Are you okay?
Like,
Dylan,
yeah.
I heard my name being slandered. Watch out, boy.
Yeah, Dylan, we're gonna have it here soon, and I couldn't be more excited. All right, guys, please check out this movie. It is on Prime right now. You're in for one of the best movies of the year, and I guess I'd call this kind of like it breaks boundaries in a way, you know, because I guess technically you could classify this as a short film. It may not be like a full feature length, but man, does it put itself in that conversation of best
it
movie
really
of
does.
the year.
Oscars, put it in there.
Yeah.
Put it in there.
Oh my God.
Please get a best animated feature nom.
Please. If this is not in there, and if I see freaking
Moana 2.
oh man, am I
please
gonna be
be good.
pissed? Yeah, this needs to be in there. This really does. This again, it breaks the boundary.
Despicable Me 4. will
Oh,
be
God.
it, but
Despicable.
no.
Yeah. Oh my God. This breaks the boundary of short film now. Like I feel like it puts itself in the conversation of best movie of the year, and it's again it succeeds on every level. Really can't recommend it enough.
And it's not a massive commitment either. It's only
yeah,
60
big
minutes.
time.
You know?
It
You
goes
don't
by
have to
so
spend-
fast, too.
You don't have to spend that much with it, and it's still one of the hardest hitting films I've seen all year. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, check it out, guys. You can find it on Prime right now. I'm gonna be looking into the soundtrack.
Fantastic soundtrack.
I
my
mentioned
God.
it when I first saw it. It was just like the first couple notes of music in the film. I remember just turning to my girlfriend and I whispered like, "Fuck, this music's amazing."
I heard of his name because he was like a feature on one of Nujabes' songs.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was like,
sick.
oh, that's cool. And then then after the movie, I looked up the soundtrack. I was like, oh, this is cool. And
Yeah.
he apparently does a lot of contemporary piano music.
Oh,
And
it's-
so
Oh, nice.
perfect. He was
Yeah.
like literally the perfect choice.
It was
So,
perfect.
I'll have to look more into his music.
So yeah, it's amazing. Jonah, obviously we'll have you on again here pretty soon. I've been really itching to get you and Dylan in the room together to discuss a
We're gonna have a
topic.
grand old time.
Yeah, and it's gonna probably be one of the most entertaining things I've ever heard, and I'm super excited for it when we get that done. I guess in terms of animation, eventually me and Wallied will get into our most anticipated movies of next year.
Yeah.
But already I think that's in my top 5 or top 3 is The Colors Within by Naoko Yamada.
So ready.
Silent
We're
Voice
so ready.
Comes out January, and man, am I excited!
I'm actually excited for January for once.
Yeah,
I know.
I couldn't be more excited.
Surprised
for
it
that
took
movie.
this long.
We'll have to get Jonah on that episode.
yeah.
I couldn't be more excited. Again, I think it's in my top 3 most anticipated movies of next year. So yeah, that's another one to look out for, and that's probably the next one we'll be reviewing. And or before that, Dan to Dan has been surpassing all of my expectations.
Yeah, gotta catch up on that one.
How far are you?
I haven't had a chance to watch past the 3 episodes, so
Oh, you'll have a nice little long run time. That's the thing I hate about weekly.
yeah, because I didn't know it was
releases.
weekly, so I was hoping I was gonna be able to binge all of it. So
Yeah.
I was just gonna try to wait for
It
all of
sucks
it to come
because
out.
it's
but-
just like 17, 18 minutes, like including opening and ending of just content each week. Which is
Yeah.
like, it's great, but it's also, I like seeing things all at once because then like my perception of it is altogether
Yeah.
Yeah, I can
compared
get,
to
like-
like being fractured around weeks.
yeah.
It's becoming like a staple right now in my culture, I guess, is just like my own personal culture of like, now I kind of look forward a lot to Thursdays.
least you have
There's just
something to look
something I'm
forward to,
just
yeah.
so excited about. And this last episode was really, really good. And then the one before that kind of touched on the topic that I mentioned in the first review of like, I could really watch these characters do anything and I'd be entertained.
so good.
And that one before that, man, did that prove my point. And I'm just loving it. So maybe we'll talk about that before Colors Within come
Yeah.
out.
Sick.
I would love
yeah.
to. That'd be awesome.
It's really awesome. All right, I guess we'll end it here. Look out for us on Spotify, YouTube. Rate us. We're going to be on.
us up.
We're on Letterboxd right now, so check out all of our reviews.
We're coming for you, Zoomers.
Yeah. Yep, we are. And yeah, thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it.
Good day and good night, mates.
You guys are free. I'll untie you now.
Wait for our most epic review, Fateful Findings, next week.
Oh, yep, that's coming.